Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me on the Sunday Morning Mug. This is episode 3. In this episode, I have titled The Importance of Prayer. In this episode, we will be going through Habakkuk. I was planning on doing this last week, but of course, if you follow, which I know at least one of you do, you know who you are. You know that last week, God really put something on my heart that I just felt like He really wanted me to speak about that did not involve Habakkuk, not really at least. So I ended up doing that for episode 2. So episode 3 will be going through Habakkuk 1:1 through 2:1, reading out of the New King James Version, of course. And going through it this week actually seems a little bit more appropriate too, and I'll get into exactly what I mean by that here in a little bit. Now, as always, it wouldn't be the Sunday Morning Mug without letting you know what I'm currently drinking this morning. Of course, this morning I'm drinking out of my Bass Pro Shop mug. It's got the bass on there getting caught. And for those of you who are listening and aren't watching, it's a robin egg blue color with a black interior. It's beautiful. Probably my favorite cup I have. Or mug, sorry. Alright. And what am I drinking this morning? Well, I'm drinking fruit punch. Ooh, those plosives are horrible. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm drinking the Fruit Punch Crystal Light. And about the plosives, I apologize. I'm going to try to reduce as much as possible. I've been meaning to get a windscreen, but I just have not gotten around to it. And if you notice the background noise, the reason being is because I have the fan on, the main fan on in the room. Then I think the laundry's going on as well right now. Of course, I am a home studio, so I have to deal with those outside noises. And the reason why I have the fan on, it's because, like I said, I am also, or like you may know, I should say, I also am planning on eventually launching these videos on YouTube. Just for whatever reason, basically, it's at this point it's adding up to me being lazy, but I will get them up there eventually, I promise. But to make these videos, I have my softbox lights on me, which I guess I don't technically need, but I'm a perfectionist, so yeah, they're there. And they are hot. They get really, really hot after a while. So that fan is there so I don't start just dripping, drenched with sweat. That just would not be fun on camera. I'm using a little bit of a different angle this time. I don't know why I'm explaining this to you, because you're probably going to be listening to this before you ever watch it. A little bit more of a close-up when this video does eventually go up, and the other ones go up as well. When you get a chance to compare them, let me know which one you like better. I personally like this way better. See, it feels a little bit more intimate, a little bit more personal. But I mean, if you like the other version better, where it's more newsy, you can see my computer, my Bible, all that stuff, the mug, then let me know, because I will switch it back for you guys. Now, like I mentioned, YouTube content is coming soon. I just have like a lot of other stuff going on right now as well. For those of you who might know, I run a few other YouTube channels on top of this one, and I really want to keep this one more. I'm not as motivated to make a YouTube channel out of this one. I know it's important. It's eventually going to happen. But I wanted this one to be more of a podcast that you could download and listen to on your drive to church or drive to work or anything like that. So I guess the motivation for turning this into a YouTube channel hasn't been very high for that reason. And then, of course, that's where the laziness comes from. But I will be putting up content because I know, video is a lot more popular than spoken word. And it's been requested a couple times, so just know your voices are being heard. All both of them. It's just I gotta find the motivation, so I apologize. It's completely my fault. Now, something. So I had mentioned that this particular episode is called "The Importance of Prayer," and prayer is extremely important. Now, what is prayer exactly? Kind of a silly question. You should know what prayer is by now, but if you don't, prayer is a conversation between you and God. It's something that is that intimate time that you and God have together, that you speak to Him. Talk to Him, voice your concerns, praises, whatever you want to do. Now, sorry, I got a frog in my throat and he will not get out. So, something I've been praying about, and I hope you guys would start praying about as well, is I've been really wanting to make this thing, the Sunday morning mug. I've been really wanting to make it like kind of a full-time gig, something that I did, make it my ministry. But a ministry that I would do full-time and could fund, full-time and everything like that. So I'm kind of wrestling with that idea right now, in a lot of prayer right now. Also, that's kind of why I mentioned before, this is a very relevant thing for me to be going over right now, because it's I've been in a lot of prayer these past week and a half or so, because I've been wanting to go full-time doing this, become a full-time content creator. It's just kind of a dream job, a dream mission for me, if you'd say. So that's kind of been on my heart right now, and I've been trying to think of ways that I could and maybe this is completely wrong of me to do. I don't know. I haven't heard one way or another from God, to be honest. And I'll get more into that in a little bit as well. But I've been thinking of ways that I could, go full time with this. Because right now I have a full time job, and and now thinking about it and like talking about it, a lot of people, have full time jobs while they're in ministry, while they're doing preaching and things of that nature. So, maybe this is fine. Maybe the reason I haven't heard anything back from God is because this is just where I need to be, and He just needs me to stop asking. But that's just something that's been on my heart. I really want to go full time with this and have this not only be the center focus of everything. It free up time for me to, do more research and do more studies during the week and everything, and not have to feel so rushed. I could just. This would just be my main focus and everything. But now that I'm talking it out and thinking about it, maybe possibly, the reason why God's been so silent is because He wants me to just shut up about it and just have my full-time job and do this as well. Which, my job that I have right now, I actually am, potentially going to be getting promoted into a position where I'd be doing more content creation kind of stuff. So maybe that's possibly His answer to that, where I could, be doing content creation for my work and then also to be doing it for you guys too. I don't know, just something that's been on my mind, something that I've been kind of working with in my prayer life and everything. I'd really appreciate it if you guys would pray for me too, and just let me know, what God puts on your heart for this situation. One thing that I was thinking about doing, and that I might do this, whether this becomes a full-time thing or not, I was thinking about possibly opening up a Teespring store, for like merchandise and things of that nature, but I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how, I don't know how to word it. Like I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do or not, if that's something I should do or not. Would that take the focus off of God and everything? Whether I should open it or not, I definitely will be making myself a t-shirt. But yeah, that's basically the Teespring store would be like merchandise, stuff like that. As you know, if you know me really well, you know that I'm a sucker for novelty. So yeah, that's basically what the Teespring store would just be merchandise and stuff. You could go there and pick things up, support the podcast, the channel, whatever. But yeah, prayer on that too, just as if that's, a good thing to do, if I should do that or anything like that. I don't want it, I don't want it to ever seem like I'm doing this for like money or anything like that, and that's why like I've been really cautious and careful about like looking at like things like the Teespring store or getting sponsors or things of that nature, because I really want this to be focused on God, and if any of that would take that focus away, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But I mean, I haven't heard one way or another from God, so I mean, just pray for me. Let me know kind of what He puts on your heart. I don't feel like this. I just want to know if this would be a right move for me or not. So that being said, I kind of babbled there for a second. So if you're still with me, I appreciate it. So we're in Habakkuk this morning, and we're talking about the importance of prayer. Again, prayer is an extremely important thing. So a little bit of a backstory on Habakkuk. Now, for me, Habakkuk's actually, right up there probably with like Jonah and like the stories of David and things of that nature. Just one of my favorite books in the Bible, stories in the Bible, prophet. Not just because it's a short book either. Every time I read this book, it just really just resonates with me. Something I feel like I always just learn, like it's just one of those books, like you just feel like you always learn something new. It just always seems relevant whenever I read it, and I love it so much. And in today's climate, in today's world, kind of hearkening back to last week's episode, I also feel like it's relevant for that case as well. We're just seeing a lot of just craziness going on right now in like the political spectrum, just war, terrorism, shootings, like things like that. I think that this book is relevant also for that, and also shows us the importance of prayer during times like that. So a little backstory on Habakkuk. He is another minor prophet like Jonah, which is the last prophet we covered. Now, from my understanding, when it says minor prophet, it just means that the books are not as thick. I don't think there's really any other meaning behind that. If there is another meaning, let me know. I couldn't really find anything else on it. But yeah, that basically is what that means. It doesn't mean they're like less important or anything like that. It just strictly means that the books are smaller. Now, there's not a whole lot of history on Habakkuk. There's really nothing that we really know about him or anything. The only thing that we really, concretely know, just based on what the book is about and kind of judging the timeline and everything. We know that he lived in Judah in the decades leading up to its fall to Egypt, and then the Neo-Babylonian Empire, respectively. Egypt first, and then Babylon came in afterwards. And so he was probably in there around, the book of Habakkuk is probably covering around 630 or 629 BC, somewhere around that time frame, like right before the fall of Judah. Now, during the time of Habakkuk, there's just a lot of turmoil and rebellion against God among God's children. Now, one little piece that I thought of while I was kind of researching everything, is I feel like this rebellion and just this just turmoil and everything that Israel was going through at the time, or Judah was going through at the time. Well, Israel, same thing. I believe. Now, don't quote me on this, because this is just something that I thought of as I was reading and researching. I believe that a big reason for all this rebellion and all this, there's a lot of idolatry and stuff like that going on as well during this time. Assyria, whose capital was Nineveh, which we read about in Jonah. Assyria was actually ruling the northern kingdoms of Israel during this time as well. So I feel like, a big part of the reason of this rebellion and just all this turmoil was due to the fact that, potentially there was some influence coming from the northern kingdoms down to Judah, and then, people just gained that hive mind mentality and just kind of started going with what everyone else was doing, and just kind of fell off that way. So yeah, I think there's a big chance that those northern kingdoms were an influential figure to cause all this stuff to go on. Now, it goes into a little bit of, gives you kind of an idea in the first few chapters what's going on. I mean, right during this time, there's no respect for the Torah. There's just violence and injustice going on. The Torah, of course, it's the law, that the Jewish people still follow, I believe. But just it was kind of the way that they were supposed to conduct themselves, worship God, things of that nature. It was their law. It was the law that God had made for them, and people were not following it. Like I said, there's violence and injustice just running rampant. Another thing that I read as well, and if anyone has any extra information on this, I would love to hear about it. So there was a lot of corruption with the leadership as well during this time, but I kind of got some conflicting, as I was doing research, I got kind of conflicting stories or ideas on this, because it said, a few, articles and research things that I read, said that the leadership was corrupt, but then I also read that the king at the time, and I should have wrote his name down, gosh darn it, but I also read that the king at the time was actually, one of the better kings that Judah had ever seen. So if there's anybody who can give me a little bit more insight into that, or maybe tell me which one's correct, I'd love to hear that, because I was a little lost on that, because I was just getting conflicting information. Now, of course, Habakkuk is, going around seeing all this. He's a man of God, and everything. I believe, in fact, he was more than likely a priest as well, from what I was reading. Obviously a prophet, too. But he's going around just seeing all this debauchery going on around him, and he's just seemingly frustrated with God. The reason for this is just, in his eyes, it seemed like God just didn't care about anything, because there's all this craziness was happening, and just all these bad people were allowed to be bad, and just the good people who were following the Torah and just were obeying God's commandments just seemed to be just getting the short stick on everything. So that's kind of where we start with chapter 1, verse 1. And again, for you guys watching, I'll be throwing everything up on the screen for you. Now, so Habakkuk 1, verse 1, the burden which the prophet of Habakkuk... Oh, let me back up here. The burden which the prophet Habakkuk saw. So here we get some good imagery of just how affected he was by everything going on around him. It's saying, it was a burden for him. It was very, very, it just really affected him deeply. It was a burden on him. So, verse 2 is where he, kind of gets into voicing his complaint, writing that Yelp review on God. So verse 2 starts, "O Lord, how long shall I cry, and you will not hear? Even cry out to you violence, and you will not save." So like I said, here he's voicing out his frustration that, all this stuff is going on and God just does not seem to care. Now the first little piece there, "O Lord, how long shall I cry?" That speaks to me. It says to me that, he's been praying about this for a while, and God's just been silent on the subject. Now this was a little interesting to me, because, a prophet of God praying to God and not getting an answer, that just seemed a little odd. But then I was thinking about it, and again, this is just something that's coming off of my mind. I don't know if this is like a true thing. Like, I wasn't there. I didn't get a vision or anything. But what I was thinking about is a lot of times with us as Christians even, and probably here in Habakkuk's place as well, we get into these very scripted prayers with God, just very lined out, very specific things we say, and it's not really coming from the heart. It's just things that we say to him, like, we'll go and, dear God, bless this food to our bodies, kind of thing, and there's just really no heart behind it. Now, with this prayer here, in verse 2, it seems like he's being a lot more raw with God, a lot more real. It's just coming from his heart, and I think this is what God wants, and I'm thinking that is why God was so silent with him in the first place, is just because, this is potentially, I'm not saying this is what was going on, but potentially, he was saying those scripted prayers. He wasn't really putting any heart to it, and God, being a God that wants us to seek him, and wants us to, seek him with all our heart, obviously wanted him to, be real with him, be just more, more raw with him. I always put it into the perspective of like having a relationship with like any other human. Like your parents, for instance. Like, would you go to your parents and just have this like scripted thing that you'd say to them and then just never really talk to them ever again? No, you're very raw and open with them. You talk to them, like they're a person. And I think that's what God wants. He wants us to just be, he wants us to be real. He wants us to, speak from our heart. I took entirely too long on that portion. I apologize. So verse 3 starts here. So verse 3 starts, "Why do you show me iniquity and cause me to see trouble? For plundering and violence are before me. There is strife and contention arises." Just giving an idea of what's going on in Judah right now what he's complaining about. Not complaining, inquiring about, I guess would be a better word. Then verse 4, "Therefore the law is powerless," speaking about the Torah, "and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, therefore perverse judgment proceeds." So just again painting that picture that, there's all these wicked people, surrounding the righteous, and just God doesn't seem to care or anything. Voicing his grievances and everything, which is, I think that is exactly what God wanted, because in verse 5, God answers. Let's take a look. So, verse 5, this is God speaking now. "Look among the that was wrong. Look among the nations and watch. Be utterly astounded, for I will work a work in your days which you would not believe, though it were told to you." So God, at this point, finally answers back, because I think he got what he wanted. He wanted Habakkuk to be raw and real, and finally he was raw and real. So God answered back, and he answered back really quickly, it seems like, which is nice. Now, these next two passages that we're about to go over, 6 and 7, 6 specifically, are a couple of my favorite passages in this whole book. But really, going back to verse 5 really quick, God kind of sounds like a hype man here. Like, he's getting them all pumped. Like, whenever I read verse 5, I always imagine God in like a boxing ring, like the what's it called? The Shure microphone comes down. For those of you who don't know what the Shure microphone is, it's the silver chromy one. Then he here, I'll demonstrate for no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to drop my microphone, but I'll be mad. But, the microphone comes down and God's like, "Look among the nations and watch, be utterly astounded." Just kind of like a announcer or a hype man or something. It's just, it's just funny. It's funny to me. It makes me happy. Then that too, I'm sure as soon as Habakkuk heard that, he was getting all excited, rubbing his palms together, just could not wait to hear what God had next. He's just sitting there like, oh boy, yeah, here it comes. Oh man, he's getting us out. I knew he was a good guy, Sorry, God, if that was a little inappropriate. Anyway, so verse 6, this is where it gets good. And this is God again. For indeed, I am raising up the Chaldeans, a bitter and hasty nation, which marches through the breadth of the earth to possess dwelling places that are not theirs. Now, the Chaldeans, real quickly, and this is something that happens kind of throughout the Bible a little bit. A lot of times when it says the Chaldeans, it's referring to the Babylonians, and in this case it is referring to the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which is the second empire that the Babylonians kind of ran. And this, of course, is headed by would be headed by Nebuchadnezzar the second, I believe, and his father. Then his father would die, and then Nebuchadnezzar would take over. And that's who the Chaldeans are. They're in this case, it's talking about that second Babylonian Empire that would then basically they would come in. So I believe that I covered it a little bit earlier. It said that Egypt would be coming in, and then the Babylonian Empire. So basically how it worked is the Assyrians, of course, held the kingdoms in the north, and then Egypt, and I believe Egypt and Assyria were actually kind of battling against Babylon at this time, or the Chaldeans. So Egypt wanted to basically make a pact, or make an alliance with Assyria. So they went through Judah and actually took control of Judah while they were there. And this happens after Habakkuk. I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what God's plans were. So they take over Judah, and then Babylon takes out Egypt and Assyria, leaving Judah open to attack. So that's kind of the timeline there, and that's we'll get into that here in a little bit as well. But first, verse 7, God starts just kind of describing a little bit more about the Babylonians, the Chaldeans. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity proceed from themselves. So basically saying that they're just kind of describing their arrogance and everything. Their horses are swifter than leopards and more fierce than evening wolves. Their chargers charge ahead. Their cavalry comes from afar. They fly as the eagle that hastens to eat. So just speaking on the fact that their military is very strong, and they are just gobbling up other countries. Now, verse 9, continuing to kind of speak about them. They all come for violence. Their faces are set like the east wind. They gather captives like sand. That's a lot of captives. They scoff at kings, showing their arrogance again, and princes are scorned by them. They deride every stronghold, for they heap up earthen mounds and seize it. Then his mind changes, and he transgresses. He commits offense, ascribing this power to his God. So, first thing here, when you get raw with God, when you get real with God, expect a real answer. And that answer is not, always going to be something that's, fuzzy and warm and makes you feel good. Sometimes it's going to be like, yeah, you're going through a hard time right now. Get ready, because it's about to get worse. And that's what we see here, as, Habakkuk is, trying to figure out, what's going on. When are you going to start doing something about this? And God's like, well, I'm going to, let these really bad guys take over. So, like I said, you're not always going to hear, what you want to hear. And, God sometimes is just going to slap you with some truth, and it's going to hurt. It's going to really hurt. And like I said, this was still a little ways out, but, God was kind of giving him an idea of what was to come. And this would be, Babylon's second rise to power and everything. So then from there, Habakkuk 1:12 is where Habakkuk begins to reply to what God has told him. So Habakkuk 1:12, are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have appointed them for judgment, speaking about the Chaldeans, or possibly the for Judah. I have to look into that a little bit more. But yeah, O Lord, you have appointed them for judgment. O Rock, you have marked them for correction. So right here, it almost sounds like Habakkuk's trying to, butter up to God a little bit before he continues to complain because he doesn't like that answer. It's kind of like when you want to tell your wife something or ask your wife something that or husband or whatever, that that they're not going to be really happy with, something you want to buy, something you want to go do or whatever, and before you do that, I just go, yeah, hey babe, you're beautiful, love you, you're amazing, you're great and everything. Can I go get a boat? Kind of like that thing, almost like you're buttering them up for the second tough question kind of thing in this situation. So Habakkuk continues in verse 13. You are of purer eyes than to behold evil, and cannot look on wickedness. Why do you look on those who deal treacherously, and hold your tongue when the wicked devours a person more righteous than he? So he's kind of here. It seems like he's asking God to pump the brakes a little bit. Hold on. These guys are like real bad guys, right? Like, why are you, just raising up, the bad people in Judah and letting them do their thing. Now you're raising up the bad people over there in Babylon, letting them do their thing. Why do you do this? Why do you let these, bad people devour, the righteous people? Why are you, basically, yeah, like why are you raising up bad people, while your chosen people suffer, kind of thing. Then verse 14, this one's a little funny. Not funny, but it's I can tell he's a little frustrated with the answer. Let's put it that way. So verse 14, why do you make men like fish of the sea, like creeping things that have no ruler over them? So this, I can almost taste the disgust that Habakkuk has for sinful people in the verse, basically saying like, why did you even create those people, those lawless individuals and everything? I like that verse. It's funny because I feel like that's a lot of times how we are as Christians, me at least, how I am sometimes. Why are you creating these sinful people and letting them be, more successful than me and everything, which is kind of selfish, kind of short-sighted and everything on our part, but we're only human. Then verse 15, Habakkuk kind of goes on to talk about the Chaldeans a little bit, the Babylonians. They take up all of them with a hook. They catch them in their net and gather them in their dragnet. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. So speaking about, just Babylon's power, the machine of Babylon just going around and just grabbing these people and just with ease and just conquering these different nations and things of that nature, speaking to the machine of Babylon right there. So verse 16, therefore they sacrifice to their net and burn incense to their dragnet, because by them their share is sumptuous and their food plentiful. So this is kind of painting a picture of the Babylonians, the Chaldeans. Of course, I'm sure you already know, but the Babylonians were a very wealthy, arrogant bunch, and not only that, but they're very scholarly, very intelligent people, very cultured people, very powerful army, just had everything kind of going for them. One thing that I wish I could go back and see was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. Just the descriptions of them and everything are just very, very lovely. But yeah, so he's kind of speaking to that, just saying that they, instead of giving praise to God for their opulence and their ability. They're instead, praising themselves a little bit. Like, look at this machine I created that's, going out and conquering the world and just bringing in wealth for us and everything. So instead of, praising God, they're, burning incense to their dragnet, their machine, their armies, their what have you, their ability to go out and just conquer, not even realizing that, it's God, in fact, that's allowing them to do that. Now, verse 17, I'll touch on that a little bit more. I just want to read verse 17 first really quick. So verse 17, shall they therefore empty their net and continue to slay nations without pity? So right there, he's kind of just, asking the question, why are you allowing this to continue? Why, like, you're answering a bad situation with another bad situation. What's going on here? And I think this is very, especially in like today's climate where we see, just people, of all, just sinful people, doing well for themselves. Like I think anytime you see sinful people doing well and you're in kind of a spot where you're not doing so well by worldly standards, you get a little upset, why am I struggling? While all these other people are allowed to be successful, be comfortable and everything. And I think this is a mindset we get into a lot just because we live in this world, although we're not supposed to be of this world. We live in this world still, and we get caught up in that worldly view. We forget that although these people are gathering wealth, worldly wealth, are gathering all this stuff, in reality, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, once they're dead and gone, they're dead and gone. And then once, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, money, cars, houses, it's absolutely pointless. I mean, there's no point to it. It's very, it's short-sighted stuff, but when you have, Jesus in your heart, when you have the love of God, and you really think about it, nothing can match up to that ever. No matter what it is, whether it's a G6 plane, a Lamborghini, G6, yeah, that's a plane, a Lamborghini, anything like that at all, nothing matches up to having the love of God, having the promise that you are saved, that you're in the book of life. Nothing can possibly match up to that. And I think when we get into that mindset, prayer is really important, because God will then, reveal to you or remind you that, that you're saved, and there's absolutely no earthly thing that can come even close to matching the value of that. So that was a really long explanation there. So Habakkuk 2:1. In this part, I really love this portion. It really shows Habakkuk's faithfulness. Like, although he complains, although he is really bitter and kind of a little frustrated with God, he's still faithful. He still knows that God is faithful and everything. So Habakkuk 2:1, and this is kind of the end of this exchange, and then next week we'll cover the rest of the book. Habakkuk 2:1, I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart, and watch to see what he will say to me, and what I will answer when I am corrected. So basically, rampart, of course, for those of you who don't know, is kind of the space between the city wall, and it's like where the archers would stand and everything when the city was getting attacked. So he's just painting some good imagery there, just really just showing that, because when you're sitting on the rampart, you're waiting and watching for something. You don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know, when they're going to arrive or anything, but you're watching, you're waiting for them. You're waiting for those, the army to come, whatever. So I think that paints a really good picture that, when you're praying with God, when you're in that, season of prayer, you're praying about something for a long time, patience is really important. Just sitting on that rampart and waiting for God, waiting to see him, break over the horizon and come to the wall, I think that's extremely important in prayer, because, if you're not patient, if you decide to just, go and do something because it sounds good or anything like that, you could, completely go down a path that is not intended for you, and it will not work out for you because God is not in it. So I think that's, a very important part of prayer is, listen for God and be patient, so that's kind of the gist of it. Here we see Habakkuk just get real with God, just get really raw with him, and just ask those really hard questions. He's not, at that point, he was not concerned about, stepping over the line or anything like that. He was fed up, he was frustrated, he voiced his concerns to God, and God answered. Now, is God always going to answer that quickly? No. Like I said, you're going to have to be patient sometimes, but he will answer because God is always faithful. Now, the reason for this is, of course, and like I mentioned it before a little bit as well, God ultimately wants us to seek him, because when we seek him, we grow in him, we become stronger in him, we become stronger Christians, and that's what he wants. He wants us to be after his heart. And that's why I believe a lot of times he, doesn't answer prayer a lot, because he wants you to pray more. He wants you to get, better at prayer, more diligent with prayer. So, that's another possibility that you might wait for a while to hear back from him. So, yeah, that's kind of my takeaways of this one. We see this prophet, praying and just being in prayer, speaking with God, not worrying about stepping over the line, still being respectful, but not stepping over the line. And that's how we should be with God when we pray. We should be raw, we should be real, we should speak from the heart, speak with passion. I'm getting a little worked up here, sorry. But yeah, we should just, speak with passion, speak with love. He's our Father. He wants us to be real with us. I swear I've said that like a million times by now, but I just really want to drive that point home. Don't get stuck in these different stage scripted prayers that you pray or say or anything like that, or don't be, don't just pray, prayers of praise when things are good, or when you should praise when things are good, but you know what I mean, like just these scripted prayers that we do that just don't come from whenever you, okay, let me sum it up by saying this. When you pray, before you pray, or after you pray, ask yourself and really examine the prayer and ask yourself, did that come from the heart? Was my heart really in that when I was speaking to God? And if no, pray again. Do it over. And just be raw with him. Be real, because that's what he wants. Woo! Alright, so that was... Whew, alright. Sorry, I got really excited there for some reason. I guess the Holy Spirit was... Oh man, those plosives. But I guess the Holy Spirit was just in me or something, man, because I was like... I don't even want to talk about it because you guys aren't going to believe me, but... or maybe you would, I don't know. But, so that's what it is. God just wants us to try and love him as much as as he loves us, because, it's impossible thing to do, but he wants us to at least try. And that's kind of where that's coming from. So, next week we'll kind of finish off Habakkuk. The end of Habakkuk is, God showing what, staying faithful will bring you, and just showing you that although he sometimes puts us through hard times, there's always a way out. There's always not a way out, but there's always an end to it. There's always a reason, and the ultimate reason is showing his glory. But we will get into that next week, because I wanted to kind of try splitting the book up a little bit, to spread it out a little bit and not bore you guys by going through a whole book, and just trying something different, trying to hone my Bible study skills, I guess. But yeah, if you guys really want to support the podcast and the channel and everything, go subscribe on YouTube. It's the same name, the Sunday Morning Mug. Then it really helps me if you guys download these podcasts, so be sure to do that as well. Then of course like it, share it, whatever you want to do with it. But that helps me out a lot. Especially if God gives me the green light on going full time with all this. Those downloads will help a lot as far as getting sponsorship or becoming relevant in the podcasting community to really reach a broader audience. But again, like I said, those are things that I'm praying about right now. I'm not making any moves until I hear back from God. I'm in that patient phase that we were talking about. Just sitting on those ramparts, waiting to hear back to figure out what my next move should be. Bear with me 1 second here. If you guys haven't tried the Crystal Light Fruit Punch, by the way, you need to go do that soon. And sorry to break the fourth wall really quick. But I got this coffee called pumpkin spice pecan, I think it is. My wife's gonna be mad for me saying it wrong, but she's from the south, so they say pecan, but I say pecan. It's whatever. But yeah, I'm really excited to drink that tomorrow. I'll let you guys know how that goes. Maybe I'll have that on the next one. But yeah, sorry for breaking the fourth wall here. I'm sure you already know this isn't filmed on Sunday morning. And if you didn't know, I'm sorry for breaking your heart. But it's not. Yeah, if you guys, like this podcast, if you guys have any ideas, any prayer requests, anything like that, please let me know. Send me, a comment, send me a message, like me on Facebook so you can send me a message. I actually opened up the messenger on the Sunday Morning Mug page. So yeah, if you have any prayer requests, any ideas for, books or whatever to go through, let me know. I'm always open to new ideas. And yeah, and I appreciate you guys for listening. And if you listen through the whole thing, I really appreciate you. Well, all right. So this has been the Sunday Morning Mug. Once again, I'm Isaac Leha. I'll see you next week.